Ladies and gentlemen, there are people in this world who do not walk away because they stopped caring. There are people who create distance not because their feelings became weaker, but because their feelings became too deep, too intense, and too painful for them to handle. And that is one of the most heartbreaking realities of human connection. Sometimes the person who loves you the most is the person who stays the farthest away from you. At first, this idea feels impossible to understand, because when we think about love, we imagine closeness, we imagine communication, we imagine someone reaching for us, choosing us, and standing beside us no matter what happens. We believe love should move closer. We believe love should speak. We believe love should fight. We believe love should hold on tightly and never let go. But human emotions are not always that simple. The heart does not always follow the path we expect. Love is not always a straight road that leads directly to another person. Sometimes love becomes a quiet place filled with fear, unanswered questions, hidden emotions, and words that were never spoken. And this is where the deepest pain begins, because when someone loves you deeply but chooses to stay away, the person left behind often feels confused, they feel rejected, they feel forgotten, they may even feel betrayed. They begin asking themselves questions that repeat inside their mind during the quiet moments of the night. Why did they pull away? Why are they not here? Did I do something wrong? Was everything I felt just an illusion? Did they ever truly care about me? But sometimes the answer is not as simple as rejection. Sometimes the person who loves you deeply is not leaving because they do not care. Sometimes they are leaving because they are carrying a pain that you cannot see. Sometimes they are fighting an invisible battle inside themselves, a battle between what their heart wants and what their fears allow them to accept. They may be afraid of not being worthy of your love. They may be afraid of showing you who they truly are. They may be afraid that if they allow themselves to love completely, they will lose control. They may be afraid of needing someone so much that they no longer recognize themselves. And when we learn to look beyond appearances, when we begin to understand the hidden language of silence, we discover something important. Distance is not always a sign of absence. Silence is not always a sign of emptiness. And someone pulling away is not always proof that love has disappeared. Sometimes distance is what love becomes when a person feels overwhelmed by their own emotions. Carl Jung believed that the human mind contains many hidden layers. He understood that the person we show to the world is only a small part of who we really are. Behind our words, behind our actions, behind the expressions people see every day, there are hidden emotions, hidden fears, and hidden wounds that shape the way we behave. Jung called this hidden part the shadow. The shadow is not simply something negative. It is the place where we store the parts of ourselves we struggle to accept. It holds our insecurities, our pain, our shame, our fears, and the parts of ourselves that still need healing. So when someone loves you deeply but stays away, what you are witnessing may not be a lack of love. You may be witnessing their inner struggle. You may be seeing the moment when their fear becomes louder than their feelings. You may be seeing the silent battle between their desire to come closer and their belief that they cannot survive the risk. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the behavior of someone who feels nothing. A person who does not care does not spend nights thinking about someone. A person who does not care does not carry memories of another person throughout their day. A person who does not care does not type a message, stare at the screen, and then delete it before sending. A person who does not care does not imagine reaching out and then stop themselves because fear takes over. A heart that is truly detached does not struggle like this. A heart that is truly finished does not keep looking back. When someone who loves you deeply stays away, there is often a hidden story behind that distance. Sometimes they have been hurt before. Sometimes they gave their heart to someone in the past and experienced disappointment. Sometimes they opened themselves completely and were met with rejection, betrayal, or emotional pain. Sometimes they learned that the deeper they love, the more vulnerable they become. And vulnerability can feel dangerous to someone who has learned that love can hurt. So they create distance. Not because they feel nothing, but because they are trying to protect the part of themselves that has already been wounded. They may tell themselves they are being strong, but sometimes they are simply protecting an old scar. They may say they are fine, but inside, they may be struggling quietly. They may appear calm, but your presence may awaken emotions they have spent years trying to control. Because you remind them of something they deeply want. You remind them of connection. You remind them of hope. You remind them of a version of themselves that they are afraid to become. And for someone who has survived by building emotional walls, honesty can feel frightening. This is why people often misunderstand distance. They believe distance means a person does not care. They believe silence means someone has forgotten. They believe if someone is not chasing them, then the feelings must not exist. But the human heart is much more complicated than that. Sometimes the stronger the emotion becomes, the stronger the defense becomes. Sometimes people stay away because they believe they are not enough for the person they love. This is one of the quiet tragedies many people carry. They look at the person they care about and think, what if they get close and discover everything I try to hide? What if they see my flaws? What if they see my fears? What if they see the parts of me that are still broken? What if they realize I am not the person they hoped I was? And because they fear being abandoned, they choose to leave first. They create distance before someone else has the chance to hurt them. They walk away before disappointment can arrive, not because their love is weak, but because their fear is stronger. And that is what makes this kind of love so painful. Because underneath the fear, the feeling may still exist. A love that is hidden is still a feeling. A love that remains silent is still a feeling. A love that struggles to express itself can still be real. It may not always be enough. It may not always create a healthy relationship. It may not always lead to a future together. But inside that person, the emotion can still exist as something powerful and alive. Think about how many people appear peaceful on the outside while carrying storms within. They smile while they are hurting. They answer normally while their heart feels heavy. They say, I am busy, when the truth is they are afraid. They say, it is not the right time, when the truth is they do not know how to stand in front of someone who makes them feel completely exposed. They remain silent even when their heart wants to speak. That is the tragedy of unspoken love. And that is why someone who loves you deeply may choose to stay away. Because loving you forces them to face parts of themselves they have avoided for years. You do not simply awaken attraction within them. You awaken memories. You awaken emotions. You awaken hopes they buried. You awaken questions about their own worth and their ability to trust someone with their heart. Sometimes real love does not make people feel stronger. Sometimes it makes them feel more vulnerable. It removes the masks they have carefully built. It reveals wounds they tried to forget. And not everyone knows how to handle being truly seen. Perhaps you are slowly learning that love without consistency is not enough. Perhaps you are beginning to understand the difference between someone who feels deeply and someone who is truly ready to commit. Perhaps you are discovering that a heart can be touched by someone, yet still not feel safe enough to build a life with them. That is a painful lesson. It is not the kind of lesson people want to learn. It is not the beautiful version of love we often dream about, but it is a truth that many people eventually have to face. And yet, even after experiencing disappointment, we must be careful not to let pain turn us cold. We must not allow heartbreak to convince us that every person who creates distance is dishonest. We must not assume that every silence is a sign of betrayal. Because the human heart is complicated. Some people truly care, but they are afraid. Some people genuinely love, but they are carrying wounds they never healed. Some people have beautiful emotions inside them, but they do not know how to express those emotions in a healthy way. Some people want to stay, but they do not yet have the emotional strength to remain. That does not mean we should excuse every action. It does not mean you should wait forever for someone who refuses to show up. It does not mean you should put your entire life on hold because another person is fighting their own battles, but it does mean we should remember something important. Human beings are often carrying invisible struggles. A person can care about you and still be afraid. A person can miss you and still stay away. A person can love you and still not know how to handle that love. The heart can be loyal and frightened at the same time. Imagine someone sitting alone late at night. The room is quiet. The world has gone silent. They are looking at their phone, thinking about you. Your name is in their mind. Their hand moves toward the screen, but they stop before sending anything. They wonder if they should reach out. They wonder what would happen if they did. They think about whether you would respond with kindness or whether the distance between you has already become too large. They wonder if one simple message could reopen emotions they have been trying to control. They ask themselves if you still care. They ask themselves if they are too late. They ask themselves if reaching out would bring healing or create more pain. And in that private battle, something important happens. The love does not always disappear. Sometimes the love becomes stronger. What disappears is courage, because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage means moving forward while fear is still present. It means choosing action even when uncertainty exists. So when someone who loves you deeply stays away, it may not always mean they stopped caring. Sometimes it means fear has become stronger than their ability to act. But even fear has a beginning. Fear does not appear from nowhere. Fear usually comes from a place of pain. Fear is like a guard standing at the entrance of an old wound. It protects the person from experiencing the same hurt again. It remembers every disappointment. It remembers every betrayal. It remembers every moment when trust led to pain. That is why fear can become so powerful. It convinces people that staying distant is safer than becoming vulnerable again. It tells them that protecting their heart is better than risking another heartbreak. So when fear keeps someone away from you, it does not always mean they do not love you. Sometimes it means they are protecting a wound they never healed. That wound may have come from childhood. It may have come from a painful relationship. It may have come from being abandoned, rejected, betrayed, or disappointed by people they trusted. Sometimes people are not running away from you because of something you did. Sometimes they are running away because of everything they experienced before they ever met you. You became the person who awakened the fear, but you were not the person who created the wound. Understanding this should make us more compassionate, but it should also make us wiser. Because understanding someone's pain does not mean you must sacrifice your own peace. Caring about someone's wounds does not mean you have to allow their confusion to destroy your emotional stability. You can have compassion for someone and still have boundaries. You can understand someone's struggle and still choose yourself. You can believe that their feelings are real and still recognize that their absence is hurting you. That is emotional maturity. And perhaps this is the deepest message hidden behind the idea that someone who loves you deeply may still stay away from you. Sometimes a person's heart is fighting a battle against itself. Sometimes they are caught between what they feel and what they fear. Sometimes they want connection, but they are afraid of what connection requires. They want closeness, but they fear vulnerability. They want love, but they fear losing control. But while someone is fighting their own battle, your life cannot remain frozen forever. You deserve a love that is present. You deserve a love that communicates. You deserve a love that has the courage to step forward. You deserve more than someone's potential. You deserve more than hidden feelings and silent affection. You deserve effort. You deserve honesty. You deserve someone who does not only feel something for you, but chooses to show it. Still, before we reach the point of letting go, we must acknowledge the pain. Because loving someone who loves you but stays away creates a very unique kind of heartbreak. It is painful because the heart does not process love the same way the mind processes reality. The mind can understand distance. The mind can understand timing. The mind can understand fear. But the heart remembers. The heart remembers the small moments, the gentle conversations, the way someone looked at you, the feeling of being understood, the moments that felt different from everything else. The heart takes small pieces of memory and turns them into something much larger. A glance becomes a sign, a message becomes a promise, a moment becomes a future. And when that future suddenly disappears, the emptiness can feel overwhelming. You may tell yourself to move forward. You may tell yourself to stop thinking about them. You may tell yourself that it is time to forget. But emotions do not disappear simply because we command them to. The heart does not heal according to a schedule. The mind may understand that someone is gone, but the body can still remember their presence. The soul can still remember what it felt like to be connected. This is why unspoken love can sometimes last longer than spoken love. Spoken love has clarity. It has words. It has definition. It has moments that can be understood. But unspoken love exists in uncertainty. It lives in questions. And uncertainty can become addictive. It keeps us searching. It keeps us wondering. It keeps us looking for signs that may or may not exist. We ask ourselves if they miss us. We ask ourselves if they think about us. We ask ourselves if we truly mattered. We ask ourselves whether they are protecting themselves or whether they have already moved on. And silence rarely gives clear answers. Instead, silence often creates more questions. But even in that uncertainty, there is something meaningful about loving deeply. Because to love deeply means allowing another person to matter. It means opening your heart even when there is a possibility of pain. It means accepting that another human being can touch your life in a way that changes you forever. That is not weakness. That is proof that your heart is still alive. The tragedy is not that you loved someone. The tragedy is that sometimes love cannot find the place where it can fully grow. Sometimes two people can have real feelings, but the timing is wrong. Sometimes two people can care about each other, but they are standing in different emotional places. Sometimes love exists, but fear, wounds, circumstances, or personal struggles stand in the way. But remember this carefully. Just because a love cannot fully become a reality does not mean it had no meaning. Some people enter our lives to reveal something within us. Some people arrive and awaken emotions we thought we had lost. They remind us that we are capable of deep connection. They remind us that we can still feel tenderness. They remind us that our hearts are not empty. They show us that beneath our fears and disappointments, there is still a part of us that wants to love and be loved. Sometimes a person does not come into our life to stay forever. Sometimes they come to teach us something about ourselves. They show us our ability to care. They reveal our emotional depth. They uncover parts of our heart that were hidden for years. And even though losing that connection can hurt, the lesson remains valuable. Even painful love can have meaning. Even distance can teach us something. Even silence can reveal something important. Maybe it teaches patience. Maybe it teaches wisdom. Maybe it teaches self-respect. Maybe it teaches us that we cannot force someone to choose us. Maybe it teaches us that love without presence is not enough. Maybe it teaches us that the right person will not only feel deeply, but will also act with depth. The right person will not hide forever behind fear. The right person will not leave you trapped in confusion while saying they care. The right person will not make you constantly question your value. That is the truth anyone must understand when standing in the shadow of someone else's distance. There comes a moment when you must stop asking only why they are away. You must also ask what their absence is teaching you. Are you being asked to wait, or are you being asked to release? Are you practicing compassion, or are you accepting emotional unavailability? Are you holding on to the person, or are you holding on to the possibility of who they could become? These questions matter. They help you return to reality without forcing your heart to become cold. Because reality matters. A love can be genuine and still not be enough. A person's feelings can be real and still not create a healthy relationship. Someone can care about you deeply and still not have the ability to give you what you need. Sometimes, the hardest truth to accept is this: someone's feelings can be real, but real feelings alone cannot build the life you deserve. That truth can hurt, but at the same time, it can also bring freedom. Because there is a difference between being loved and being chosen. There is a difference between someone thinking about you and someone reaching for you. There is a difference between someone missing you and someone making an effort to be part of your life. A person can carry you in their heart and still not have the courage, readiness, or emotional strength to stand beside you. That does not mean you are not valuable. It does not mean you are not important. It simply means that their ability to love may not match the love you need. And when you understand that, you stop taking every distance personally. You stop believing that someone's absence automatically means you are not enough. You begin to understand that sometimes another person's silence is a reflection of their own inner struggle, not a reflection of your worth. But even with understanding, the pain remains. Of course it does. Because every human being wants to feel chosen. Every human being wants to feel seen. Every human being wants to experience love that meets them halfway. So when someone steps away, the pain is not only about losing the person, it is also about losing the dream connected to that person. It is about losing the hope that maybe this could become something beautiful. It is about losing the future you imagined. It is about grieving the version of yourself that existed when you believed this connection might last. And that is why these situations can feel so overwhelming. You are not only missing someone, you are also mourning a possibility. You are mourning a future that existed only in your imagination. But grief, even though it hurts, is also proof that your heart was capable of feeling something deeply, and a heart that can feel deeply can also heal deeply. Healing may not happen quickly. It may not happen perfectly. You may remember that person for years. You may always carry a small piece of that chapter with you. But healing can transform pain into wisdom. It can make you more aware, it can make you more grounded, it can teach you not to confuse emotional intensity with emotional safety. It can teach you that love should not require you to lose yourself. It can teach you that silence is not always a reason to wait. It can teach you that distance is not always proof of a special connection. Because the deepest love is not only something someone feels. The deepest love is something someone chooses to live. So if someone who loves you deeply is staying away, do not assume the story is simple. Maybe their distance comes from fear. Maybe it comes from old wounds. Maybe it comes from bad timing. Maybe it comes from emotional immaturity. Maybe it comes from a part of themselves they have not yet healed. Maybe they are fighting battles that you cannot see. Maybe their heart wants something their mind is afraid to accept. Maybe there is love there. Maybe there is longing there. Maybe there are feelings they cannot express. But whatever the reason may be, remember this: you are not meant to spend your entire life waiting in the uncertainty of someone else's emotions. You are allowed to respect their struggle. You are allowed to understand their fear. You are allowed to believe that their feelings are real. And you are also allowed to choose a life where love does not constantly leave you confused. Because real love does not only touch the soul, real love arrives. Real love communicates. Real love makes itself known. Real love may struggle. Real love may need time. Real love may be afraid. But real love does not endlessly hide from the connection it claims to value. And this is where the deepest truth exists. Someone who loves you deeply may stay away because their heart is not ready to face what it feels. But your heart must still remain free enough to live. Their silence may reveal their pain, but their silence should never become the prison of your future. Their fear may be understandable, but your need for clarity is just as important. Their distance may be real, but so is your worth. So allow the silence to teach you. Allow the distance to reveal the truth. Allow time to show what is genuine, But do not allow confusion to become your permanent home. If their love is real, eventually it must become courage. If their care is real, eventually it must become action. If their feelings are real, eventually they must choose presence instead of hiding. And if they cannot do that, then you must understand something important. Deep feelings without deep commitment can still create deep absence. That is not cruelty, that is clarity, and clarity is also a form of love. So whenever this message reaches your heart, remember this. Sometimes the person who loves you most is the person standing the farthest away. Not always because they do not care. Sometimes because love has revealed a wound they are not yet brave enough to face. But your purpose is not to heal their fear for them. Your purpose is not to make yourself smaller so someone else feels comfortable. Your purpose is not to remain trapped in uncertainty forever. Your purpose is to honor the truth, to protect your dignity, to keep your heart open to what is honest, present, and brave, because your soul deserves a love that does not only exist in secret. Your soul deserves a love that can stand in the light. And perhaps that is the final lesson. What remains hidden inside the heart eventually seeks expression. What remains unspoken eventually seeks a voice. But until it becomes real, it remains only a possibility. And your life is too precious to be built only on possibilities. Yes, someone may love you deeply and still stay away.